Kant's critique of pure reason and his views on the ideas of the soul and God, although they may seem like skepticism towards reason, are not at all incompatible with the fundamental aim of Kant's critical philosophy. Because Kant does not aim to develop a theory that contradicts morality and the issues that determine the content of morality by criticizing reason, Kant's main goal is not to belittle reason, but to show it its true place by considering all its abilities, and thus to determine the main task of reason in our spiritual lives. According to Kant, this task of reason is in a secondary position. That is, reason is not creative, but regulatory. Kant's views on the ideas of pure reason did not deny the existence of the soul and God, but only emphasized that it was not within the power of reason to prove the reality of these ideas. Therefore, Kant's criticism is directed at every kind of dogmatic understanding of reason, that is, reason dogmatism, which sees reason as the highest faculty of man and gives our faculty of understanding the authority to do metaphysics only by its own power. Kant continued this critical attitude in the theoretical field, the field of pure reason, in the field of morality, which is the practical field of reason. According to Kant, besides our knowledge of the objects we perceive with our senses, we also have moral knowledge. The difference between this moral knowledge and theoretical knowledge is that it is the knowledge of how objects and people should behave, not how they do behave. In other words, according to Kant, moral knowledge is independent of people's behavior. That is, it is a priori knowledge. For example, we cannot verify the moral rule that people should not lie by looking at whether or not people actually lie. This moral rule must be true independently of people's behavior, that is, a priori. Because, as we saw earlier in Kant's understanding of knowledge, necessity and universality are the defining characteristics of a priori knowledge. Based on this, Kant argued that the philosopher's task is to reveal the a priori elements of moral knowledge, to show the source of these elements, and to show how synthetic a priori judgments are possible in the field of morality. Kant, who sought a priori elements in the field of scientific or theoretical knowledge, tried to reveal these a priori elements in the field of morality in his work titled Critique of Practical Reason, in which he put forward his second major criticism. For this reason, when constructing his moral philosophy, he did not deal with human nature completely, but rather treated it as a rational being. Because, according to Kant, when man is considered as a natural being, he will give us what is factual, not what is necessary and universal. Because man, being a natural being, has behaviors that are determined by many different needs, drives, and emotions. Therefore, when man is considered on the basis of these facts, it will not be possible to put forward a universal understanding of morality that is valid for all people. In other words, Kant aimed to establish his understanding of morality not on the basis of the natural dimension of man, but on the basis of practical reason, which would enable him to act freely, independently of his natural side. The point to note here is that when Kant says practical reason, he actually means the moral function of a single reason, human reason. However, according to Kant, although there is only one reason in man, this reason relates to objects in two ways. Accordingly, reason can either grasp an object given to it externally, or it can make the object real and actual. Kant refers to the theoretical function of reason with the former, and the practical function of reason with the latter. When it comes to the theoretical function, reason applies the categories it knows beforehand to the information it receives from objects given to it externally through the senses. In practical reason, the source of objects is reason itself. Therefore, practical reason is not concerned with applying its categories to the data of sensory perceptions, but with being found in moral decisions. In other words, according to Kant, while theoretical reason is directed towards knowledge, practical reason is directed towards universal moral laws and decisions of will in accordance with these laws. While Kant sometimes refers to a faculty of reason that is separate from and influences the will with practical reason, sometimes he identifies practical reason with the will. In the first sense, Kant emphasizes the rational element in moral actions and the activation of the will by practical reason through moral command. In the context of identifying practical reason with the will, he emphasizes the volitional dimension in action and points out that the will is not a driving force, but a rational force. Kant asks the question, what is good? Which is frequently asked in the context of morality in the history of philosophy, and in his work titled Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, he gives the following answer. Nothing in the world, indeed nothing even beyond the world, can possibly be conceived which could be called good without qualification except a good will. Goals and values such as happiness, health and honor, which many philosophers consider good in themselves, are not unconditionally good for Kant. According to Kant, virtues and values such as these do not represent great value unless they are guided by a good will or intention, and sometimes they can even be harmful to humans by being misused. In other words, although these virtues and values can be good in many ways, they are dependent on goodwill in order to be guided by moral law, and in this respect they are not good in themselves. Kant also opposed understandings of morality that consider moral actions in the context of a goal, and the means to achieve that goal. According to Kant, neither the goal nor the means to the goal can be good in an absolute sense. The only thing that is morally good in itself is the good will, which is the necessary condition of all other things that are considered good and which is itself unconditional. The good will, on the other hand, is the will that knows what its moral duty is. That is, that recognizes the commands of practical reason and does its duty not for the sake of a goal, but because it is its duty. Kant also objects to naturalist, hedonistic and utilitarian understandings of morality that see happiness as the ultimate goal for the same reason. According to Kant, it is not possible to establish a necessary relationship between morality and happiness. On the contrary, it is rather unvirtuous or immoral actions that lead to happiness and what hedonistic and utilitarian moral views consider to be success. Moreover, according to Kant, man can be happy even by following his instincts and satisfying his bodily needs, just like animals. Therefore, according to Kant, morality cannot be something related to happiness. From this, Kant concludes that goodwill requires man to overcome his own instincts and emotions. Goodwill is the will that knows its duty and acts out of duty, despite inclinations and natural desires. In this context, actions are divided into actions in accordance with duty and actions arising from duty. According to Kant, the truly moral actions are those that arise from duty. If we consider this point through the example used by Kant, it is the duty of people to sustain their lives, but at the same time, people have a tendency towards this. If a person sustains his life only because he is inclined to do so, this will have no moral value. For this to be a moral action, the person must sustain his life with a sense of moral duty. According to Kant, a person sustaining his own life because he desires to do so is in accordance with duty, and therefore, of course, not morally wrong. But if it is not a matter of arising from duty, but rather of being in accordance with duty, the action will have no moral value in itself. Let's examine the distinction between conditional, that is, hypothetical imperatives, and unconditional, that is, categorical imperatives. Kant defined the maxim in question as a subjective principle of action or a subjective principle acted upon. Maxims, on the other hand, are divided into two, conditional and unconditional imperatives. A conditional imperative refers to a maxim that is adopted not in itself, but as a necessary rule to achieve a desired outcome. In other words, an imperative that tells us what means should be used to achieve a goal is a conditional imperative. In this context, the conditional imperative expresses that the person who wants to achieve the goal will also want the means to achieve the goal. Therefore, according to Kant, such imperatives, being subjective and conditional, cannot provide the objective conditions for forming the moral law. An unconditional imperative, on the other hand, is an imperative that is accepted and acted upon not as a means to another end, but solely for its own sake. In this respect, it has an unconditional and absolute validity. According to Kant, what makes an imperative unconditional is that it is not based on any natural inclination, reason, or desire. What makes it an imperative is that it is a law that determines the action and is put forward in a way that is free from all natural goals and conditions. On the other hand, although the unconditional imperative is an a priori principle, that is, independent of all subjective conditions, it does not carry a necessity like a law of nature. Man does not obey the unconditional imperative out of necessity, as he does with the laws of nature, but because he sees fit as a rational and free person. Based on this, Kant expressed the moral law as follows: act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Kant also expressed this basic expression of the moral law in different ways according to human life and behavior. According to Kant, beings whose existence is based not on our will but on nature, beings devoid of reason, have a relative value as means. Therefore, they are called things. However, humans as rational beings are called persons and cannot be considered as means. According to Kant, man, unlike other beings in nature, should be an end, not a means, because he is a being who has a will and who is the objective ground for the self-determination of the will. According to Kant, this goal, because it is put forward not by natural desires and inclinations but by reason, is not only a valid goal for all people, but also provides the necessary basis for the unconditional imperative that binds the wills of all people. Based on this, Kant puts forward a second expression regarding the moral law: act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. Chapter summary. In this chapter, we have seen Kant's moral philosophy in general terms. We have learned the basic concepts and principles of Kant's moral theory, which has an important place in the history of philosophy.